Hey everybody, Edo here, and for this week's video, I want to talk about game mechanics or rules that ruin a game for players. And it's funny, I was out camping with the kids, and they picked up this game, which is Toasted or Roasted, the card game set, and I thought it'd be cute. I thought it might be a little like Uno, so it was fine. We played it, and we were playing this game, and basically the way the game works is you are trying to roast marshmallows, and you have to start fire, and then you have to put them on a stick, and then you can roast them, and there's a bunch of take that and thwarting in the game, like pretty aggressive sort of feel to it. But setting that aside, in order to start, everyone starts with wood, like a fire, like a campfire, but not on fire, camp wood, whatever. Fire pit without the fire. Anyway, and in order to do anything in the game, in order to play a marshmallow, to do anything, you need a fire starter card to light your fire. And there's like a little circle thing, you flip it over, it's your camp, the wood, and you flip it over, it's on fire. Neat little, it's on mechanic. But, so, it's a deck of cards you're drawing, and there's fire starter kits in the game. But if you don't have it, you literally can't do anything. Like, you're like, meh, can't do anything, draw, nope, your turn. Oh, you got a fire kit, you got a fire kit, you got a fire kit. I'm just sitting here. It's like, you know, just one of those absolutely terrible rules where you're like, what were they thinking? And in fact, there's this weird thing where they made a spot on a little tableau where somebody, if they want, they may discard a fire starter card so somebody else might take it. Mind you, you'd never do it because it's essentially letting somebody catch up. But, you know, and then on top of it, you have the ability to put somebody's fire out, and then suddenly they're back to square one. So just really vicious. But the thing that caught me was just this, like, you can't start playing until this happens. And it's just like, how are we going to have fun with this? And so it got me thinking, and I went to social media of all places, and I asked on Twitter and Facebook, people, you know, name a game mechanic or rule that ruined a game for you. And admittedly, the Twitter one didn't really pick up, but the Facebook post got a lot of feedback. I mean, I think it was at 150, 160 comments, maybe more at this point. And tons of people doing exactly what you might think, calling out this, you know, this thing in this game, this thing in this game, when this happens, yada, 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 on and on and on. Now, I'm going to link both the Twitter and the Facebook discussions in the video. And I really think, in particular the Facebook one, it's worth checking out. In this video, I think I'm just going to generalize, I'm going to summarize what I think are the heart of these vast array of complaints from players, but I think very visceral. But if you're a designer or somebody who's thinks about board games a lot or playing games, I really think it's worth reading the list. Like, I was like putting it into an Excel spreadsheet and like trying to categorize it and thinking about like what's underneath what people were saying. But just to read the list is super valuable. Just look at and understand what people really dislike and are passionate about. I'm going to generalize it, but I think the specifics are part of the beauty of it. I really do. So if you follow the link, you can check it out. Add yours. I'm going to be in there reading more, or in the comments too. What game mechanic or rule do you think ruins games? Add it in there. I'll comment along. The other thing, though, I'll note is I don't want to say discarded. How do I say? Anything that I felt was like clearly a matter of taste. Like if somebody was like, I hate social deduction games. It's like, sure, okay, you hate that, but that's not really necessarily a mechanic or a rule that ruined a game. Unless in some of these examples, maybe it was a game you thought was different and had it. But like generally speaking, if it was like, I hate roll and move, like, all right, whatever. Like, not that there's nothing wrong with those comments. I think there are clearly things people dislike. I don't like 4X games. But I really wanted to focus on like individual mechanics or individual rules that somehow created fiction in an otherwise great experience, right? Or one you were liking. Okay? So that's the premise. Let's dive in here. And so again, I went through the list. I tried to categorize it, boil it down, and then produce this general thing. All right, so there's 5 that I sort of came up here. So one is, I think, there were a number that I would put into the category of genre or complexity mismatch, right? Like, it's one thing, like, you're always going to have a preconception when you're going into a game. So the hype, right? The hype train might make it so that you don't like it, or you thought it was going to be better than it was, or you paid a lot of money for it and now you're disappointed. That's sort of one category of this, which I think is relevant. But, that's going to happen based on hype and stuff, and it's not really mechanics related. But the one that there was a lot of is what I would talk about this again, genre or complexity mismatch, where somebody was expecting one type of experience based on the type of game it was, or, the type of look it had, the visual, like it looked like a kid's game or a lightweight game. And then there was this mismatch, right? So like a common one is casual, easy games with like really complicated scoring, or like negative, like Patchwork is an example. I don't want to give too many examples, but like negative points for a casual game. Like who's a casual player that's like, give me negative points? Also, just where a game that was seemingly light and then really long amount of time for no reason that didn't match the lightness, like length of time with complexity, brevity with lightness. So anytime where, or a social deduction game that really like turned into a game where there was like, why do I have, or like a Euro game, like why do I have the social phase or this narrative phase in this otherwise perfectly great point salad game? So it's a weird balance, because on one hand you're like always going to try to, like, great games that break the mold are games that take something you're expecting and then twist it, right? And that twist will often work for people, but I think a lot of times, or oftentimes, that twist doesn't necessarily work for people, and especially if they're not expecting it, it will just be a huge turnoff. I also have come to learn and appreciate that for complexities or genres, genre conventions are meaningful in that people who seek out specific genres and types of games tend to like them the way that they expect them to be, right? So, it comes with that matching, but when you go through this list, there's just all these places where you're like, okay, so basically you thought it was the 20-minute filler game and then they landed you with this, or you thought it was this way and it was that, and it wasn't because of hype, it was because the genre or the complexity or the visual direction, like what it looked like, mismatch. An example on my end, Legendary Creatures, we had this mismatch of this is this heavy, complex, meaty, thinky game, but when you look at the box, it's light and it's got lots of creatures, and you think it maybe is like a little Pokemon, and it was way too heavy for what it is. And so I think specifically mechanics that don't marry well into that narrative for a player turn into things that ruin the game for them. Another one is losing progress or being penalized out of the player's control. This is like sort of passive impact where, and it's not really always heavy duty, like super negative. I have a different category for that. This is like examples where off turn the score track changes so that your scoring doesn't work the way you thought it would. Or another example, there are a lot of examples where there's hidden information you don't really know about, where there's a big consequence to the end game scoring, where it's not really clear on a hidden objective that just is going to skew it one way or the other, and you're not really aware of it as a player. There's like a lot of things where players were reacting to what was like clearly some consequence or change that was out of their control, or like felt like it was just passively against them. It passively didn't work. Like the track changed, or I was working on this and then it all changed. There's a good example in here is also any game where you have like a rule set where you have a rule set where you have to like learn and understand the game to appreciate how it works, and there's this sort of passive result of you not understanding. Like, it's really important many people, especially people that end up hating your game, don't play it 15 times. There's some people who are like, I really wanted to prove that I didn't like it. But the average person who doesn't like your game isn't going to play it. So anything where there was, it felt like the game was, just impacting the player, again, penalizing the way they were playing. A lot of people reacted to the sense of score shifting in some sense. And hidden information in the way that it impacted scoring or impacted play in a way that it felt like I'm playing, this is in my control, and then this thing that's out of, and this is very different than when another player does it to you. Like, I do something and I get penalized. I do something, I make a mistake. I go left, I go right. That's fine. They hurt me. I might say I don't like take-that games, and there are people who don't like that. But like, you sort of know that going in. But player-to-player consequence, it's when the board and the world and the fiction is like sort of shifting. And there were some examples in here that were like, your typical cooperative game with flipping over a card in Forbidden Island or something, or Pandemic, right? Like, I think that's the extreme example, but really the only reason that works is it's so core to the game. It's what you're expecting. It's like the premise. This is when that happens, that sense of the game's beating me, but it's not established, and it's not what I'm expecting. And okay, and there's like a category of this that I felt was different enough to call out, which is the real highlights, the ones where someone was like, this thing, and then like 7 people pigpiled onto it, were like obtuse, arbitrary, mega impactful rules that like otherwise just destroy the game for people, right? This example is like, we're playing a game, you flip over a card and everyone just loses. Or, again, I'm trying not to be specific, but like one where, and I'm not a big zombicide one, but there was a thread on like this one where if I'm shooting at a zombie and I miss my die roll, I hit my friend. I hit another player. As this like just obtusely too aggressive rule that really took out the fun of taking risks and building it. And a lot of these are mechanically sound. I'm just trying to express what resonated with players and had them go like, "Whoa, that's too much." Also in this category, I would also line in like being realistic for no particular point. Upkeep came up a lot, like just the general having to pay for stuff just all the time as not a fun or rewarding or engaging way. Like, it's these places where it's a balance. Like, they're mechanically reasons. They work in the center of the, they move the players through the game in really important ways and keep winners from winning. Like, but there's still this visceral reaction to like feeling like the game is too aggressive, too painful, too penalizing. Again, no one wants to flip over a card that says you lose. I'm investing time and I just flip over that type of extreme example. And it's not just one game, though many people will know the game in that regard. But it just comes up again and again. Even to some degree, the rule in Toasted or Roasted, just like being brutal to the player. Just ask yourself if there's another way to do it as a designer. Can you accomplish your goals without that? Okay. I felt like I had to call this out because it clearly came up a lot, which is just perceived or actual imbalance or advantages within the game, right? Either because it feels like there's one strategy to win, oh, you always do X, or there's a feeling that first player advantage, or that there's only one way to win. Like, there's this game with all these things, but you always have to, the player who attacks wins. Like, when a game presents options, but in first play or multiple players feel or perceive that there really aren't options, there's only one approach, that is a huge turnoff for a large group of players, because in many ways, playing games is about making meaningful choices and decisions, and if you feel like none of them matter except for this one approach, mixed with that advantage given to players randomly or dealt to them or just not earned, it really rubs people the wrong way. And I go back to this, like, players don't necessarily play your games 100 times. Players are not masters of your game. And, if the nuance of, that attack strategy is good for new players, but if you've played this like 10 times, you know that the other research one is just way better, but you just got to wonder if players are actually going to sit there to learn that. And there are a lot of players who just won't. And for sure, in terms of mechanic that ruined a game, a lot of the examples are like, this strategy in this game, this strategy in this game, and it amounted to this. And I keep saying perceived. Like, sometimes it's actually broken. Like, from a design perspective, first player advantage, there's someone, like, there's actually a problem. Sometimes the designer's gone through a lot of work to make it so that mathematically or strategically there is no advantage, player advantage, racial advantage. But if the outcome or the play or the way in which players play with your game produces a regularity of an outcome, it doesn't matter. I remember this incredible conversation I had with Steve Finn, who's an incredible designer. It was a ranging conversation, but one of the things he said, we were talking about score values. I think it was like in herbaceous for pots, and like what you were scoring, and we came up and it was sort of like, mathematically, here's a moment where, flipping a card this way is about the same as not doing it. So why is it that you didn't increase the point reward for this action by 1? Like, as it stands, it's equivalent or worse. Wouldn't it be better? And his answer was sort of like, sometimes the mathematical answer isn't the right answer. Sometimes it's because actually the big step decision, this part's easy for a player, the big one's the next one, and I wanted to create a better sense of satisfaction for going for the next one. Not because of mathematically, this isn't fun. This is often fun. And so you have to balance the actual perception of the game with the actual mathematics of the game. Divergent. All right. So the last one that I'm going to talk about, and a lot of these overlap. I think a lot of these fall into places where I think you could also summarize a lot of these under like player control, player expectation, which I think is along the lines of inherent to people who are complaining, right? But the last one I would summarize as like rules that impact and change game flow or progress in a game in a way that's significantly negative or sort of not in line with the pace and the fitting of the game. Like, there were a lot of games that had like a nice clip to them and then had a section or a portion of the game that just brought it to a halt. Whether it's a game and then you get to an auction mechanic and then the auction mechanic brings it to a halt, or if you get to like some really complex scoring or mid-game scoring, or a rule that takes an otherwise simple game and thrusts into it analysis paralysis, which there were a lot of them. But a game, like, these aren't complaints from really slow games. These are complaints that are from games that are otherwise fast or have a clip and then get derailed. Another part about this is, boy, if never, ever throw a player's progress away. There was a couple examples in here, but like, it's not cool to trash my stuff. Like, I'm playing, you want the bad guy to do something, like, resist the urge to be like, oh, you see what you did? I'm gonna ruin it. If you can do it, try to do it in a way that doesn't feel ruinous. You can ruin stuff but still leave my territory, but ruin my buildings. Or like, but like the one where you're like, I've made this much progress, and then the game just is saying, nope, you're 2 steps back, or, that progress is reset, or anything like that. Boy, talk about a visceral reaction. I mean, it all fits in that category of like, this is my stuff, I've earned it. Oh, the game's taking it away from me without my like being prepared and knowledgeable about it happening. Those things turn players off. They turn players off. So, I just thought this was an interesting category of stuff. I guess a different version of this was I would just read the post and read everyone's game and everyone's reaction, but I thought I would try to summarize it. If I didn't, or you think you can do it better, list it in the comments. I love it when people give that kind of perspective. But also, please, check out the Facebook post and the Twitter post, we can use this. Look at the examples, because I think you might agree, you might disagree, and some of this will make more sense. So anyway, this was just talking about game mechanics or rules that ruin games. Awesome. Thanks. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.